Hi, everybody, and welcome to Principles of Management. I'll be your professor for this course. I'm Dr. Richard McElroy. I thought I would give you a quick welcome and brief orientation into the course. So let's go ahead, we'll jump in. The basic content of this welcome message for you is I thought you'd like to know something about me, your professor that will guide you, lead you, facilitate your learning for the next 5 weeks. Let's take a brief look at the course shell itself. Something about the content, and then, of course, expectations for the course, those that I have and those that I would assume that you have for yourself in this course. So something about me. I've told this to probably 1,000 students. I started where all great business professors started. U.S. Navy submarine force patrolling the North Atlantic. If you'll see that upper left section of on your screen, I patrolled the North Atlantic, north of Iceland, patrolled out of Scotland. Did that I was in the Navy for 6 years. See, I'm married. We have one grown daughter, live in Raleigh, North Carolina. Take a look at that upper right-hand section of your screen. You'll see I have a lap dog. If you have a very big lap, he's an 85-pound black Labrador. My daughter and I are certified scuba divers. We've dove a lot, Bermuda, Mexico. I have a couple of books out there if you're very interested. They're on Amazon. A special note I'd like to make that I think is directly pertinent to your study here. I have, as you'll see, that center picture above or just below the books. I have 6 degrees. What's pertinent to you, I suggest, is I got all of my degrees. I did all of my academic work as a working adult. It was actually after I left the Navy. So I've been much where you are right now. I've worked, gone home, fed the dog, mowed the grass, paid bills, studied with a young child running around and making noise and watching cartoons. So, I know where you come from. I think I can. I certainly identify, and I think I can empathize with, what it is to be an adult learner and the challenges that come with that. Let's take a look at I want to give you a few quick notes about the course shell itself. So let's go ahead. We'll jump into that. Most pertinent, I would suggest to you, is if you take a look at your course landing page. On the left side, you have a menu of different areas within the shell. And a quick note: if you haven't navigated through your course shell, please feel free. Jump in there, go ahead, click on all of those areas, go and investigate. Be very, very comfortable with your course shell. I can give you a tip. You won't break anything. Go in, look around, get comfortable with the course shell, the layout, and where all the content is. But 2 particular notes I wanted to make about the course shell. If you take a look at that top, where I have a little blue box about announcements, I help my students navigate the course by frequent course announcements. I'll give you tips, tricks, techniques on how to navigate the course, how to engage in specific assignments, how to write, how to engage in discussion questions. I highly, highly recommend that you take a look at the announcement section every day, I suggest, and see if there are any new announcements that will help you navigate through the course and be more successful. The second area that I have highlighted there, and I've always recommended this to students: open up, copy your course syllabus. The course syllabus tells you absolutely everything that you'll need to do in the course to be successful. So I highly recommend this. Print it out, have it handy. You can put it in your book, put it in your study notes, but keep it handy. Always refer back to your syllabus and ensure that you are on track to be successful in the class. Now, let's take a brief look at your course objectives. You'll find your course objectives every week. It is usually the first listed item within your modules view for each week. Take a look at your learning objectives. I have a video out there that gives you some guidance on learning objectives, what they are, why they are, how you can use them to be successful. I highly recommend that you take a look at that video on learning objectives and see how you can best use them to your advantage. Let me make a quick note on grading the discussion question. I also have a video for you out there on grading the discussion questions. But let's start with why do we have discussion questions? Why am I so feel that they're so important? I firmly believe that our engagement every week in an open discussion about the topic and bringing into that discussion certainly things we're learning from the week, and by the way, referencing those in your discussion questions, we're bringing vividly into discussion what we're learning. As powerfully, perhaps even more powerfully, as we bring into our discussion every week real world application. Think about what we're studying every week and take a look at where you've seen that in the past, where you've experienced that. Bring those experiences into the conversation. For the other colleagues, your colleagues that are reading your discussion post, well, reflect on how our topical subject has worked in the real world. Reflect on that. Make comments back. Ask probing questions of your colleagues about their experience with what we're learning. This is a key instrument in adult development. So be sure to take your discussions every week very seriously. Now let me show you how I look at discussion questions. If you take a look at that first boxed area, understanding course material and critical thinking, when you first answer your discussion question, I highly recommend demonstrate your knowledge of the subject. This is best done by referencing specific concepts, theories, notions, ideas, things from your reading, things from the lectures. Bring those into your post. Critical thinking. In your first initial post, the answer to the discussion question each week, be sure you're engaging in critical thinking. Critical thinking is basically how you're thinking about the topic, how you think about how it would be applied. So demonstrate very well your knowledge of the material and your critical thinking about the use of that material. Now, if you take a look at the next area, replies. When you engage with your colleagues in the discussion, I highly recommend, 1, stay on topic. 2, in your discussion post with your colleagues, in your responsive post, similarly, demonstrate knowledge, what you know about the topic, and exhibit critical thinking in those discussion posts. And key here for an open scholarly discussion about any topic, I find it is always punctuated by questions. Think, if you will, about conversations you've had in the past. You'll find that they are usually punctuated by questions. You ask questions, you probe, you're interested in what the other person is saying. I find that my most successful, strongest students engage in this kind of posting behavior, reflect in depth on what your colleagues are saying, and probe them for examples and extensions of what they've already said. All right, let's take a look at the next area. I'm very, very serious about writing in your college correspondence, whether it's a paper or your discussion post. Principally, it's not an I suggest to you, it's not an academic exercise. It is to prepare us for the real world. I've read studies about what the employers are looking for in college graduates. And one, I suggest to you that is a real disappointment for them is college graduates not being able to communicate well. So what do? I stress professional writing, certainly in your papers, but also in these discussion questions. First and foremost, think about this. LOL is not a professional terminology. So all of your kind of, if you will, everyday, correspondence techniques and terminology and wording, you may want to kind of circumvent a bit. Make your writing very professional, very clear, concise. All right, let's take a look at the last areas that I take into consideration. Timing. Of course, you know from reading your syllabus, reading the course material already, that your first post has to be in by Wednesday. 2 additional posts have to be in by the end of the week. Let me give you a tip. What do I see in my most successful, my strongest students? They typically get in before Wednesday. They typically post more than 3 times. Those are my strongest, most successful students. What I suspect they're doing, they read, they study, they prepare Saturday, Sunday. They make that first post Sunday night or Monday. They answer the question. By answering the question fairly early in the week, it gives their colleagues ample time to get in, take a look at what they've said, and respond to their post. Then, with those early responses to their post, they engage in conversation, a discussion with their colleagues. So they'll generally be in more than 3 times. So take your discussions very seriously. It is a great, great tool for adult development. Okay, a couple of quick things. I've already mentioned a couple of these. If you take a look each week at your the modules view, you'll see there are listed learning objectives. We've talked briefly about them already. Be sure to watch my video on learning objectives. Where are they? Why are they? What are they? And how you can use them. Take a look at that next area. Every week you have a section of your module that says discussions. Of course, and I know you're familiar with this, but you open it up, you engage in discussions. What I'd like to do is give you greater insight around your discussion post. So I've posted a video. I highly recommend going into the announcements, take a look for the discussion question announcement and that embedded video. Also, your assignments each week generally are going to be writing assignments. And I know writing has been probably an infrequent activity for a lot of us before we got back into college. So take a look at my paper on writing the college paper. You'll want to take a serious look at that because, again, it's not simply an academic exercise. This is preparing you for the real world. For you up and coming managers, senior managers, junior executives, CEOs, you will write the professional paper. You'll have to write reports to the board, to your senior management. So in the course and throughout your program, I highly recommend become more and more familiar, comfortable with writing a professional paper. It will serve you well in the workplace. Okay, and just briefly about writing that college paper. Again, be sure to watch my video on it. I give you some tips on how to write it. But key here is you never have to guess. There are hundreds of sites on the internet that give you great advice on how to write the college paper, how to write the professional paper, how it's laid out, how it's worded, how it presents a logic argument. So there is just one URL address. That's just one place on the internet that you can find great advice on how to write the college paper. So again, everybody, welcome to Principles of Management. I'm excited to be here. As we wrap up this introduction, let me remind you of a couple of things. Your learning objectives. Be sure every week that you have those learning objectives in hand. Let them be a guide as you get into your study. Let them be a self-assessment as you wrap up. Your weekly reading. I've said this to 1,000 students. If you take your reading and you read, you study your textbook just like you had to turn around the next morning and teach it, you absorb it more, you develop more, it stays with you longer. So be sure to study your textbook, your reading each week. The weekly discussions we just talked about, I highly recommend. You're very serious about your discussions. Use probing questions, show your knowledge, engage in critical thinking in those weekly discussions. And then the last tip for you, as any professional will tell you, in the workplace, you want to be on time. The last thing you want to engage in is tardy activity. So here we'll start. Be sure to get those assignments in on time every week. All right, everybody, that's my guidance. Those are my tips. I hope it helped, and I'll see you online.